One. Hello everyone to the second part of the CMTK podcast TetZooCon 2022 recap special. I am your host CM Kozeman, joined by TK Sivgin, and for one more day we are going to be reviewing the events and lectures and discussions and implications of TetZooCon, which took place in 2nd and 3rd of December this year of our Lord 2022. And just a very brief summary for our listeners who don't know, TetZooCon is a descendant of the Tetrapod Zoology weblog, authored by Darren Naish. And in the last 8 years, it has become a convention. And I say in this year, it has become like a truly landmark event attended by people who are interested in dinosaurs, animals, evolution, attached miscellanea, associated weirdness. Basically, it's become like the mecca of anybody who's curious and interested in nature, evolution, art, and just quote-unquote dinosaur stuff in general. And both myself and TK Sivgin attended this event, and you can find the first part of our review in the video description links. And with that intro, take it away, TK. So how did our second day at TetZooCon go?
Well, on our second day, me and Miranda arrived a little late, I think only around 11. So I think we missed the first presentation, which was Elizabeth Martin Silverstone about why you should or shouldn't CT scan a pterosaur. And did you watch that one?
Actually, it was like one of the few actual talks that we attended. Actually, my wife joined me as well. And we just entered in the last 3 quarters. And basically, it was just it was really, my wife is not as afflicted with Tetsu enthusiasm as we are. But even she could feel like the speaker's excitement and involvement in the project. And I think like one of our great takeaways from this was like, I remember my wife saying, like, there's someone with an interest in life and she gets to do it. How nice. And like the speaker, she was very enthusiastic and knowledgeable about her work. And, you know, she seemed to be in her groove. And the implications were like, you basically can uncover a lot of information by CT scanning these pterosaur fossils. For posterity, pterosaurs are flying reptiles. They have like enormous wing fingers which support wings. And then basically these animals are found in fossils which are squashed flat. So as if like a tank run over them. Like that in the 2015 movie Fury. And then what happens is the speaker, her name eludes me at the moment, basically uncovered extra data from CT scanning these stone slabs, and they uncovered a lot of extra detail, additional stuff. But one of the takeaways from this thing was you shouldn't just CT scan everything and just, you know, say I'm doing research. She said that you should pick the correct fossils, you should CT scan them in a proper way. And basically, you should scan them in a way that has high resolution and has potential for future researchers to work on the fossil. And basically, if you do this right, you are able to recover 3-dimensional data from these animals, which have been squashed really flat in the fossilization process, of course. So it was like a nice primer on what to do and what to do not for this long and exciting process. Yeah, so there.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I would like to attend that.
It's okay.
I'm reminded of apparently like a big problem in sauropod science is that you often cannot CT scan certain bones because they are so large that they don't fit into the instruments.
Yeah, I think maybe for sauropod bones, some other method is necessary, like ultrasound scanning or something. But most pterosaur fossils, they're very neat, and they come pre-packaged in these stone slabs, basically. So actually, most pterosaur fossils are not like individual bones, although you have plenty of those as well. But most pterosaur fossils are like set in stone. So by scanning these stones in a certain way, you can actually learn more about them. So that was really exciting. But yeah, by the second day, even we were feeling like sort of convention head days. Basically, you spend the entire day talking and your brain works, and you just realize how much sugar that brain organ sucks from your body. So it's a bit natural to get tired and kind of like chill out afterwards. And, it's kosher to miss out the first presentations. One of the dirty secrets of conventions is that in the second day or the third day of the conventions, I am not saying this for TetZooCon at all, but in the second and third day, in the early hours, organizers usually pack in what are called these sleeper talks, and like the dirty but pragmatic rule of the law is that's where they pack in the kind of quote unquote boring or like less amateur talks, because they know that people will be in less attendance and any attendance will probably be like sleeping and stuff. But I am not saying this for TetZooCon, because actually the talks were quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the next one, which I was able to watch. Natalia, how do you pronounce that surname? Jagielska?
Yes, Natalia Jagielska, whose link is also in the video description. Yeah. She's a very young and very lucky and energetic pterosaur researcher. She single-handedly discovered this gigantic relative of the Rhamphorhynchus pterosaur, which, if you don't know, Rhamphorhynchus is the classic pterosaur with the long tail, with the tennis racket on the end of the tail. And basically, Natalia, she was a college student, and she not single-handedly, but with a team. But this is very lucky. Like, you're straight out of college and you discover a relative of this Rhamphorhynchus pterosaur that was like 2 or 3 times bigger, and which was exquisitely well preserved. So she walked us through the basically process of discovering and naming and curating such a fossil. And what do you think? I mean, while I was talking, TK also appeared with the copy of Mark Witton's Pterosaur book.
I was looking for another book actually, but I finally found it, the Greg Paul book. We'll talk about that later. I just wanted to get that for this. Yeah, like Natalia's presentation was very interesting and also just very funny because she used a lot of memes.
Yeah, I think she's like one of the prime examples of Gen Z style engaging science communication. And maybe Natalia is listening to us, so we send her our best regards. And I mean, if she goes out without a science communication in the UK, it just goes to show that some things are really, really wrong with our world, because the energy, the clarity which she communicates this thing. Also, it's like very important, because in science communication, you have to make things understandable to quote unquote your aunt or like any of the normies walking the street. And Natalia really has a good way of doing this. But what else did you think about it?
But I need to remember like what you. I mean, I really like just how thorough the explanation was of how this process of like discovering something, describing it, analyzing, publishing it, and so on goes, especially like the emphasis of how difficult it is to officially publish a scientific paper.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have to go through peer review and stuff, but also editors, and sometimes you also just need money to publish something.
Yeah, and I think she also hinted that you sometimes have to deal with prejudice and old boys clubs and other biases as well.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest takeaways, like she kind of gave us a hint that we keep talking about these Rhamphorhynchus pterosaurs, and there might be even larger undiscovered versions of these things lurking in fossil sediments out there, which is just fascinating because, I mean, these creatures they're like one of the most well-known pterosaurs. In fact, when people say pterodactyls, they usually think about these animals, but their anatomy is really unique and primitive. And you usually don't associate these things with like big sizes, but apparently quite big ones existed. So that was like,
I mean, if you look at the wingspan of Rhamphorhynchus, it already was pretty big. Like I think like bigger than any modern flying fox.
I think, I don't know, the maximum wingspan is 2 meters or something. So maybe the size of a medium-sized pelican. But the body of the body of the animal is quite small. And there are some fossils that are like just tiny. And to think that these are even bigger, I don't know. It's one of my pet hunches that these animals may have been extremely aquatic. So like gannets, they swam most of the time because we actually have a Rhamphorhynchus fossil found in combat with one of those like weird fish living at the time. And to imagine there might be even larger things, maybe even like, not like gannets, but like auks. So secondarily flightless and swimming. Yeah. And I just like that concept. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I mean, secondarily flightless pterosaurs, who doesn't love that idea? Though I do have like the suspicion that it was like biomechanically never affordable for pterosaurs to lose flight because their membranes were so interconnected with their legs.
Yeah, true. But
like, because like bats, like they are very terrestrial bats in New Zealand, for example, but they also never lost flight, even though they could have. Like, you know, there are like almost no native mammals in New Zealand except for these few bat species. Mm-hmm. And if they lost flight, they would have been so successful, like filling out that niche that on other land masses is like filled out by possums or rodents and stuff. And the fact that they never did it indicates to me that it was never like biomechanically possible for bats to lose flight for reasons that we probably should still research. And I guess the very same might be true for pterosaurs, or I guess in many, like for like speculative evolution scenarios, many other hypothetical animals that power fly using wing membranes.
As Hollywood would say, flightlessness was never an option. So there. But also, I want it to be real.
Yeah, me too. I love these like flightless Astarkid reconstructions. I like those like penguin-like creatures that people have come up with, like the one from Dougal Dixon.
Yeah. Also, our listeners, what do you think? Write in the comments. Do you believe large flightless pterosaurs are possible? And if you do, what do you think they would look like? I'm going to do this from now on in our, like you should, we are going to do this from now on because I just learned some tips about media engagement. I have to ask questions to our listeners, and by driving forth the engagement, we get an algorithm boost. But you know what would boost us even more?
If I also ask the question.
Yes. And also your support on Patreon for TK and myself. Even $1 a day makes a difference, and the links are below. So click, people, because these airplane tickets for London and these teas and coffees, they don't pay for themselves.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving on.
Yeah, wait, I did also want to ask a question for our listeners. Like a while ago, I wrote this art blog post about like the weirdest ideas people had about pterosaurs. And in there, I went into this idea by, I think, Edward Newman was his name, like in the 1940s or something, no, or 1840s, who thought that pterosaurs are actually like giant flying marsupials.
Ooh.
And so like my question, question to our listeners is, what do you imagine what an actual flying marsupial, like not just gliding, but like actual powered flight, would look like? Like imagine like a sugar glider evolving along the lines of a bat. What would it look like?
Oh yes, noted for posterity. Send us your flying marsupial concepts as well. And TK's post on weird pterosaur reconstructions is also in the video description. Read it, get inspired, and share, because sharing is caring.
So, and we are still not done with pterosaurs, because after that was it was the round table discussion with Natalia, Elizabeth, Mark Witton, and John Conway. And I think Darren Naish was also just the moderator.
Yeah, and what were they discussing exactly? Like
weren't you
pterosaurs
there?
generally? I was there, but I forgot.
They mostly trash talked the two Daves, like David Unwin and David Martil.
Yes. So, dear listeners, if you don't know this Paleocene, this scene, there's just, as they say in the movie 8 Mile, so much hate in the room. I'm kidding. It's not like personal hate, but some debates are really acrimonious. And so in the panel, the debaters kind of really harshly critiqued these two researchers, Dave Unwin and Dave Martel. And what exactly were these two guys saying that drew so much hate? Can you tell us?
Yeah, like last year they published this paper on like a rhamphorhynchoid specimen where they claimed that the things we like it has been well known since like the 70s that many pterosaur fossils have like these fibrous preservations called pycnofibers.
In their wings or in their fur? Or both?
Well, that is their fur. That's what I mean.
Okay. True.
Like that they had like a body covering and that they were thus reconstructed very fuzzy.
Yes.
Basically the two Daves last year or so like published a paper where they claimed that in a rhamphorhynchoid specimen that these fibers are not actually outside the body but are like deteriorated actinofibrils. So that this is just an artifact of decomposition, and they used, which might be the case in this one specimen, but they used this in press releases to claim that all pterosaurs were naked after all, that they were scaly reptiles. Like
get out of here!
In the
Come
1930s. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean,
and of course, and this was like immediately met with criticism because there is so much to criticize about this. Because not only let's list some of the counterpoints to this. First, most of these fibers found in other pterosaur fossils like project away from the body and are also not present on the wing membranes, which were the actual things that had actinofibrils in them. So it appears very strong that these things really were outside the body. First that. Secondly, in a recent paper, people actually found remnants of melanosomes inside these fibers. And if you don't know, melanosomes are what gives like hair or feathers color. And of course, why would a muscle or skin fiber inside your body need pigments, like color pigments? That makes more sense if this is outside your body.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Yeah. As the great American philosopher and statesman Tony Soprano would say, get the fuck out of here. I mean, this thing does not have a leg to stand on. And if you even see like one fossil, this extremely famous Sordes fossil, for example, from Russia, I mean, if you think those are body fibers, then every other mammal fossil out there with fur attached must also, like, it does not have a leg to stand on.
Imagine like fur only evolved in the last 10 million years.
Oh, and everything was naked. But this like idea of naked prehistoric animals is a pretty tough one to let go. And I don't know, like even personally, I like reptilian creatures better than furry ones. There's no debate about it. And maybe it's this psychological tendency to imagine these things as cooler things, or as you once outlined in one of your articles, it's this kind of alien Mesozoic era trope where things were not as they were today, and animals looked and acted quite differently in a way that could never be repeated afterwards. But I mean, if you think for like 2 minutes about it, there's no reason why fur could not evolve more than once. And I mean, it evolved multiple times in insects and spiders. So
yeah, and on that note, I'm not sure I don't think they really went into that detail, even though Darren Naish opened the talk with that question. But there is growing, like more evidence growing that pycnofibers in pterosaurs are homologous with the protofeathers that you find in various dinosaurs.
Very, very true. Yeah. I mean, it's one of my like gut feelings that pterosaurs are just small early dinosaurs. And if you look at the skulls of the earliest pterosaurs, actually, like Eudimorphodon.
Yeah, I have it right here. Wait.
So TK is bringing out a picture of the Eudimorphodon skull. It almost looks like the skull of a herbivorous ornithopod. So, like, if you know what ornithopods are, it's actually very weird and counterintuitive. So, teeth have multiple cusps, as if it's almost like been kit-bashed from a plant eater, because they have like multiple cusps on each teeth. And this is something you only see in related forms. You only see among things like Heterodontosaurus, which is an ornithopod. So I would not be surprised if these pterosaurs turn out to be like flying ornithopod descendants, which may in fact be related to theropods. I don't know.
I think this is more convergent evolution, because Eudimorphodons, they are early pterosaurs, but they are not the earliest ones, because like both like temporally and cladistically before them comes Preondactylus
and Petanosaurus.
Yeah, no, like that was like Petanosaurus is also a bit older, but it's actually a more derived Dimorphodontid. But like the most basal true pterosaur we know of is Preondactylus, and it does not have teeth like that. It has like these like simple interlocking predatory teeth.
Which, I did not know that.
Yeah, but can you see it well here?
Yes. So I am looking at a kind of very early pterosaur. Its wings are comparatively small. Its legs are comparatively very long, and its skull just looks like a spiky-toothed generic early pterosaur skull.
Oh wait, no, that skull is from Rhamphorhynchus itself, but this is the skeleton of Preondactylus, which looks a bit different too. Like, look at the skull.
Oh, it almost looks like the teeth of a small Silophysis or a Compsognathus great theropod. So yeah, I see what you mean. So
yeah,
this thing came first, and then the weird ridge teeth evolved later.
Yeah,
only once perplexingly.
It is, I think, now becoming very clear that the closest relatives of pterosaurs were Lagerpetids, which were these little, almost kangaroo-like Triassic reptiles that for a long time were thought to be more closely related to dinosaurs.
Oh, so things like Lagosuchus?
No, Lagosuchus has a similar name, but it's not part of the Lagerpetids. Like Lagerpeton, obviously, is part of that group, but also I'd have to
Marasuchus, perhaps? I might be wrong.
No, wait. Like Lagerpeton and so like Lagerpeton is part of that group. Dromomeron, Phaxina-Lipterus, Ixalerpeton, Congonaphon, that was recently discovered. That one is very interesting because it literally was like the size of a jerboa, so it could have fit in your hand. Like this.
Well, they have the coolest names, I must admit.
Yeah.
Ixal erpeton sounds like a kind of...
Yeah. And possibly Scleromoculus is also part of that group. There is like some intense debate around that animal now. Like for the longest time, it was thought to be the closest relative to pterosaurs that we know of. Then in 2020, a new study by, what was his name? Something Bennett.
Michael Bennett.
Michael Bennett. Yeah, that's his full name. Sorry. I almost said David Bennett, but that's too many Daves. Yeah. Bennett, like, he analyzed the skeleton again, and he came to the conclusion that this is actually like a doswellic archosauriform unrelated to pterosaurs, and that instead of like being a bipedal hopper like a kangaroo, it actually hopped on all fours like a frog. And I really love that reconstruction because it's just cool to think of like a reptile frog thing like that. But now there was a new study again that defended again this idea that this was a bipedal animal closely related to pterosaurs and possibly within that Lagerpettit group.
So just for our viewers, let me describe this what was it? Charovipteryx? No.
That's
Scleromoculus.
Scleromoculus, yeah. This like little kangaroo-like dinosaur thing almost.
But it had extremely long hind legs, and basically imagine a lizard somewhat with the leg proportions of a frog, and a slight tail. And, back in those days, everybody was fucking everybody. So it's kind of like difficult to make out the exact relationships of these animals. They probably share like a core root somewhere in the deep time of the early Triassic period anyways. But I mean, long story short, every study reveals a new ancestry or new affinity.
From that 2022 paper is this reconstruction.
It's very interesting because in the 1990s, this exact animal was reconstructed with like wing membranes in its hind legs, kind of like the weird Charovipteryx thing.
Really? I never saw
it. Yes, there are some 1990s reconstruction of the same exact creature, which we just described, the kind of long-legged frog reptile lizard thing. But there was once a fancy attempt to link it to Charovipteryx, which is this extremely weird thing with membranes on its hind legs. And I think like the artist made the connection through the long hind legs thing, and kind of went away with that. But so like the kind of classification of these things, once again, it's like high school in a small town. Everybody's dating everybody. And then you pretend those early dates never happened. And then, anyways.
Yeah.
So
what was I about to say? I forgot. So yeah, that was the pterosaur discussion, and then I think was already lunchtime, was it? Yeah, it was already the lunch break.
And your girlfriend brought the best donuts and pizzas again. Like she was really generous.
Yeah, you got a lot for that.
And like when you think about a conference, everybody, like your brain really gets drained really fast. You talk to a lot of people, you meet a lot of people, you talking is energy intensive activity. Yeah. You think, how many calories that takes off? I don't know. So the food was really welcome. And I was in the meantime also trying to peddle prints of my stand. And thank both of you so much. You stood by me, and once again, we kind of formed a little like a cool and weird kids corner over there, peddling prints and hanging around.
I almost thought you would say peddling drugs.
Well, it was almost the same thing. And one thing I noticed that in this convention was like everybody had come out of 2.5 years of COVID confinement and loneliness. And everyone was really enthusiastic to like basically exchange their money for artifacts. What did you get, by the way, in TetZooCon? What was your TetZooCon haul?
What do you mean? You mean like the merch I bought?
Yes.
Oh, well, I got a print from Mark Witton, like of his plesiosaurs. But I have to look.
Nice.
I got the official Crystal Palace pins.
Oh, nice. You're a big collector of pins, by the way.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, for anyone who saw me at TetZooCon, like I was the guy with the huge amount of dinosaur pins on his sweater.
Yes, you wore your colors on your chest, and
yeah. So I got that. I got postcards from the Crystal Palace. I got where is it? I got a Christmas postcard from Steve White of like a Eutyrannus in the snow. That one was very pretty. But I think I gave it to Miranda. I got that. I got Platypus Matters from Jack Ashby, which we talked about in the previous part.
Yes.
And well, not for myself, but I got it for my boss, Dennis Hansen, A History of Painting with Dinosaurs by John Conway. Like, he said, hey, Timur, can you get this book for me? I will even repay you.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
well, it's gonna be a hard book to part with.
Well, my Miranda also got a copy, so I can just borrow hers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I got that. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I got the the 40th anniversary edition of After Man, directly from Dougal Dixon. But we'll talk about that later.
All right. So let's move on with our recap, if you wish.
Yeah. Next came Steve White talking about his new book, Mesozoic Art, which is the quasi third part of his Dinosaur Art book series. But he couldn't publish it under the same publisher again. That's why he had to change the name from Dinosaur Art to Mesozoic Art.
And I think Darren Naish was also a co-editor on that one, wasn't he?
Definitely, yeah. Like he on his blog, he even made like a post about talking about this book.
Yeah.
I got it here. Yeah.
The link for this book is in the video description, by the way, everyone. So if you want to get this amazing collection of Paleoart, click the link below. And I remember we had a conversation with Darren, and he was going to like exchange a copy with me for a print, basically. But unfortunately, after their talk, this book sold out so fast. And it was like everybody just grabbed their copies and went to the cash register, basically. And then they were like, phew. So no copies were left for me. So if you got them during the event, you count yourself lucky. It's a book I'm meaning to get my hands on, but probably not now.
I thought you bought it there. Oh, no, yeah, I couldn't. You were reading someone else's copy. Now I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I looked at somebody else's copy, but I couldn't get it myself. But hey, that's life.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have not read it, but I have read the previous books, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Oh, wow. For listeners, I'm just flying through this book, and I just came across like a very beautiful piece of sauropod art. But let me look which artist that is. I think it's Corbin Rainbold. Damn.
I mean, this book
let me show it to you. Let me show it.
Let me describe it as TK shows it to me. So it's this amazingly well-rendered, realistic panorama, and there are sauropod dinosaurs lumbering around the plants and the landscape like living skyscrapers. What's nice about this picture is that the dinosaurs are kind of small compared to the landscape, which kind of makes you feel like you're really there. Because like if you're in a natural environment and you're looking at, I don't know, some deer or giraffes or something, I think like 90-80% of your landscape is just full of sky and plants and just earth, basically. And then the animal is among them. And this has been painted in the same way. It's just unbelievable. But I have to give you credit for like actually reading these art books, because I seldom like read their text entirely. I just look at the pictures and get entertained. And I read some of the captions, but I mean, kudos to you for reading art books cover to cover, because actually, usually the text in these books is actually really well written and informative, but when we deal with art, at least my brain works in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, the text in these books especially is very interesting because it's usually interviews with the artists about what they think while doing it, what were their influences, what were they trying to do. And I mean, I think I remember like in the first dinosaur art, like they interviewed, for example, Greg Paul, which is of course already it's already valuable to own that book just for that. And I remember like some of when they asked him about his influences and he trash talks Peter Zallinger and Sven Burian, like, which made him a bit unsympathetic to me because I really like those artists. But I can see where Paul is coming from because especially Zallinger was not really working well with the anatomical groundwork of the things he was trying to depict in the Age of Reptiles mural.
Well, I mean, Greg Paul is known for his spicy takes, and sometimes people take this as an easy opportunity to kind of jump on him. But considering that he almost single-handedly created the current understanding of dinosaur art, you gotta give the guy a little credit. Usually, I mean, good artists are cranky people, and sometimes not very nice people. But well, that's that. I mean, it's easy to trash Greg Paul for his weird takes, but
I mean, I have an immense respect for him, and I even like some of his weirder takes, to be honest. Like, for example, the idea that some of these Cretaceous dino birds might actually be secondarily flightless. I think he really is onto something there.
Like Oviraptorosaurs or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he has had like some interesting takes throughout his life. He had an earlier theory where he thought spinosaurs were extremely specialized crocodiles, actually, in the 1980s.
Crocodiles? Are you sure?
Yeah. He mentions this in the Predatory Dinosaurs of the World book, and he says, like, I once thought them to be overgrown crocodilians. So that's, like, unbelievable.
Like, about his actual thesis in that book is that they're actually derived Dilophosaurids.
Yes, which is also another interesting take. And he once used to think that pterosaurs were late surviving prosauropods, which is, I think, like an okay take given how weird those things are.
Yeah, I mean, especially the feet look just alike. That's so, like, I can't fault him there for thinking that.
Yeah. Also, by the way, one of the weird things I learned during the event, but I'm not able to divulge, is keep watching pterosaur feet. And something interesting will happen this year. I cannot reveal more than that. After this talk, I'll tell it to you in person. But you just have to live without it, I guess.
You motherfucker.
No, well, you're gonna learn it.
Yeah. Wait, yeah, but while we were talking about Greg Paul, I forgot to mention something. Like for the pterosaur session, I actually had a question for the presenters, but they couldn't take me because they lacked the time. So basically, like Greg Paul recently published his book, The Princeton Field Guide to Pterosaurs.
Yeah.
And in there, he pushes back against this idea that when they were walking on the ground, pterosaurs would have stood on completely erect legs, almost like long-legged mammals. Instead, he thinks like the anatomy and especially the trace fossils of pterosaurs are better explained if they were actually holding their upper arm bones splayed out, like horizontally, similar to bats, with only the lower arm being actually
used to walk.
Yeah, and I think he might be onto something there because the way he reconstructs these, it makes them look much more natural, actually. Like, let me show you like one of his skeletals of that. Because then the pterosaurs just look a lot more like evenly legged. Like
yeah, Yeah, there might be something in there. I agree. I mean, it's not impossible, at least for some of them, to have walked this way. But then again, like counter current, I had a conversation with John Conway about this thing, and he thinks, at least for the big ones, the Ajdarchids, this was wrong, because John actually has studied like three-dimensionally preserved Ajdarchid arm bones. And I mean, in a private conversation, he just told me that now, if this thing was to sprawl, the arm joint wouldn't move that way. But it's not impossible for like the smaller forms to have this kind of bat sprawl thing. And when they get larger, they kind of like move erect. And I think a lot of these things are just really variable across many groups of animals.
Yeah. But
And
I was just really looking forward to asking the question, because Paul directly comments on Mark Witton's reconstructions. And, Mark Witton was in that pterosaur session, so I wondered what he would have said.
Ooh, shots fired. I wish you'd gotten to ask that. And I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting. The more niche a subject gets, like, I don't know, Byzantine Arabic history, or like pterosaur science, or like the evolution of frogs or something, the more heated and intense the debates are. And it's just one of these weird things about human psychology that just in itself is interesting to me.
Yeah, because nerd wars.
I guess so.
Yeah. So we were at Steve White's book presentation, and he talks about how he made those books and the trouble he went to get this third one published. And one of the main takeaway messages that I got from it is that today, for people who want to publish in like this sphere, in like the paleontology sphere, or the paleontology sphere, or I guess also Spec Evo and stuff, is to rather go with self-publishing rather than going to like an established publisher. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, as a self-published author, at least, I mean, All Yesterdays itself is self-published with John Conway and myself.
You made basically your own publishing house with irregular books.
Yes, and I mean, in some cases, like, you could get paid as a person, and just the quote-unquote publishing house is just a name you slap on the book spine. So it's a kind of weird, like, capitalist psychosis kind of thing, that everyone has to have an alter ego as a company to succeed. But I mean, I've also published history and visual history books with established publishers in Turkey, and everybody says the same thing. It's easy to turn books into money. No, sorry, it's easy to turn money into books. It's devilishly hard to turn books into money. And you have to realize, something like Spec Evo or science fiction or dinosaur books, you could put your life on it. But at the end of the day, there are maybe less than 1,000 people on the planet who are willing to pay for that book. And usually the books that sell more than 1,000 copies are things like ABC with Dinosaurs, or like My Dinosaur Friend, or like kids books, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, you just don't, you forget about making a bestseller. And I mean, even All Yesterdays, which is like a very popular book or something, I think the number of copies sold there is less than 5,000. I don't know the exact figures, but so think about that. Whereas if you're like a popular author like Stephen King, horror books or something, like, you sold books in the millions, which is like a whole other ball game. And the thing with publishing is, like, you think a beginner would think that I will complete the book, a publisher is going to like it, maybe there will be some changes, and it will come out. The way it actually goes is, I had a personal hurdle in a similar way when I, for 10 years, worked on an illustrated encyclopedia of vintage apartment signs in Istanbul's doorways. Like, can you get more rarefied? It's a 2-volume encyclopedia, 1,500 pages, more than 6,000 photographs. So it has to be published all in color. Everyone I showed this to were like, wow, this is a great work. You really outdone yourself this time. And when I said, hey, a little money for publishing maybe? And they were like, sorry, mate, can't do this. I even got in touch with one of the major publishers of history books in the world. I'm not going to reveal the name, but it rhymes with my star sign, Taurus. So make of that what you will. And the publisher accepted it. And I was like over the moon because it's like a very, very important publisher. Like if these guys print your books, like you can apply for an academic post or whatever. So, but then they said, oh, would you happen to have £20,000 for covering the publishing expenses?
Oh.
And I was like, what the fuck? And I said, I can't. It's just impossible. And so they regretfully had to let it drop. Turns out the big hurdle is the cost of, like, you have to like go to the publishers and print these books, and the publishers work, if you want like good quality pictures, the publishers work in a technique called offset printing, which is only profitable if you order a minimum of like 2,000 copies. Now, a book like that is like, maybe it will sell 2,000 copies if I like die in a very dramatic and public way, but no way in hell it's going to be like covering its profits. So I have to put some money in. What I ended up doing is I started working with my old publisher, Libra Books, which is a publisher of like historic or Judaica related books in Turkey. And mostly these books I published with them before. So what happened is that we kind of pretended it was coming out and got some buyers on board first. We used their upfront payment to print the printing run of maybe 50 copies. Can you think about it? You work for 10 years, 50 copies. And then at the end, the only people who ended up buying these happened to be like these really rich real estate people who kind of like wanted to make New Year's gifts for their families or companies or whatever. And of course, this is where the success part of the story comes in. Libraries from Columbia University, Harvard University, Stanford University. So all the Ivy League colleges, some national libraries, the Library of Congress. So they all bought this book.
The Library of Congress?
Yeah. Like,
oh, nice.
Yeah. So all my books almost all of them are represented there. So that's a kind of like, success thing.
I mean, yeah, that you made your mark in history with that. That's very good.
So
but can you live off that is the question.
You can't. You just can't. I mean, forget about it, to be honest. I mean, so you have to be doing a day job with something else, which I drew through like minor advertising and PR copywriting gigs and selling prints in conferences. And that's that. But don't let this discourage any of our listeners. Like, go and publish with Amazon online printing services. I think they do a really good deal. The quality isn't like the best in the world, but hey, at least you get your book out and, you can get your unique visions out. And I think at the end of the day, that's something people never had for decades and decades. And now you can do this. So there.
Yeah. Like, if you've been following my Patreon, dear listeners, I think I've also told you, like, I've been writing a children's book about prehistoric animals. It's kind of like the Dinosaurs sitcom in the story, where they live like anthropomorphic saurians and like their problems in like a modernized society.
So it's a bit like that 1990s Dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's the one I meant.
For modern life.
Yeah.
Now that could be a bestseller. That's a really good angle.
Yeah. I have finished the story. I just need to finish the illustrations that I planned, but I got so distracted with many other things. But anyway, like I remember like the first publisher I wrote this from, because it was like advertised a lot, and so I'll just say the name. It's called the Novum Verlag here in like the German speaking sphere.
Yep.
And they immediately wanted it, but then you look at the contract that they offered, and you have to pay at least like 4,000 francs, which is a lot.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
And yeah, I know. And then I read actually some reviews, and this is actually like a predatory publisher. They don't make money selling books. Instead, they make money from the authors paying to get their books published. So like to any author out there, look out for those and avoid them. Like any serious publisher would not want that much money from you because you're already providing the book, which is the thing that is supposed to make money.
I mean, it's kind of an easier time if your book is only text. And there, I think you can find some publishers who give you a better deal. But if you got pictures, then the whole thing changes because the printing process is more expensive, binding is more expensive.
They're black and white pictures. It's like my classic stipling style, just a bit more cartoony.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, as a rule, all publishers are crocodiles until proven otherwise. That's what I learned. But the ones you get along with, and I have a personal relationship with the two publishing houses that help publish my history-related books, Libra Books, and also Ege Books in Turkey. And then the ones you do get along with, they become your lifelong friends. And I know this is like tough to say, but you have an easier time. It's like love. I mean, if you seek it, you can't really find it. If you're just chill about it, it comes to you. But you have an easier time if you, unfortunately, at least forget making money in the equation. Like, never pay extra to get your stuff published, but forget about making money. If you make money, it's a godsend or a windfall. Whew. And with this life lesson,
yeah. Let's go to. Then there was the Mesozoic art signing event, and then was the roundtable session with you, Gert van Dijk, Jennifer Colborn, Joshua Knüppe, Adrian Tchaikovsky, and Dougal Dixon. And what did you talk about?
We talked about alien life, echidnas, and the four-headed penis, mystery of the four-headed penis. When you say knuckles, you don't think about that, do you? Anyways.
Why did they design knuckles to look nothing like an echidna?
Well, he has spikes on his fists, so that's like knuckles. But for a long time, I thought, when I was a kid, Knuckles came out. I thought he was Sonic's girlfriend, and I thought he was a she. And because it was red, and they were hanging out together. And I mean, don't get me started on the whole Sonic gender confusion thing.
If go on DeviantArt, you will find what you thought.
Oh no.
Anyway, no, what you guys were actually talking about was basically your general thoughts in designing alien life.
Oh, yes. And I was surprised that I was not a part of this conference. I kind of pirated my way into it. But then just 10 minutes before beginning, I ran up to Darren, who's the editor of the whole shebang, and said, hey, can you get me in there? I got Snaiad and All Tomorrows and all that. So come on. And he was very generous. Okay, sure. And then they brought a chair over to me. And I mean, in that talk, I kind of said one or two other things because I didn't want to take up the other people's time. And I think Jennifer had some unique insights because she was a behavioral scientist. And one of the great things she said is that basically among researchers, everyone's convinced that all animals, including the very simple ones like crayfish or lobsters, as Jordan Peterson would say, they are basically sentient. I mean, they are self-aware. They've got their own characters. Even in a lab setting, you can see this. And they were saying in the Middle Ages, people used to think of them as parable characters. So fox is cunning, a snake is treacherous, whatever. And then after the Renaissance, the kind of swing moved too much into the other direction, and now it was animals cannot feel until we can absolutely prove them.
I think it was René Descartes who said that animals are basically just biological machines. Everything they do is programmed and not There is no actual thought behind it.
I think this is one of the most evil philosophies to emerge in the last 5 centuries.
Yeah.
And I think, I hope this guy, if there is a hell, he gets treated like all lab animals combined at the same time. Like, I it's very rare for me to like hate something, but this whole Cartesian machine reductivism for life, like, I wear it on my sleeve. I hate the fucking guy. I hate the fucking philosophy. It's plain evil. And its implications, we're never going to live it down. Anyways, but that's an aside. So we spoke about that, and that was an interesting thing, basically. And also Mr. Dixon, who's like one of my idols, he like whacked out a green world model right there.
Yeah, that was like the highlight.
Yeah.
Just nerding about this model he built. Like, he's actually a very great modeler. I don't think people talk enough about that. Like, he's very good at drawing his creatures, but also modeling them in 3D, which I think is still rare.
Yeah, he belongs to the older generation of like this sort of, at least British craftspeople who are like very good at doing these things. Like, you could totally see his creations in a small museum somewhere up in Scotland, and you go there, it's full of these amazing models, like unbelievable.
Look, I'm showing you the models from the 40th anniversary edition.
Yeah. Whoa. So these are like, so he builds all these models himself, right?
I believe so.
Unbelievable. So he whipped out this model, and then on the panel, all of us, like Gert Van Dijk, myself, we brought our cameras and started filming the damn thing, which was really funny. And then basically everyone kind of agreed on the kind of supposition that if we ever meet alien life, it's going to be like completely weird and unrealizable, and we won't even realize it as a life form. And then something very interesting happened. The grandson of Francis Drake, Spencer Drake, if you're listening, like cheers, bro. Like, he was, I think, a really Chad question asker, and like really based guy. So basically, if you don't know, the Francis Drake, I believe, was the guy who was like almost single-handedly responsible for the SETI initiative, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And he created something called the Drake equation, which is like, if you filter down all the available stars, and if you divide that with the number of stars that have life, divide that with planets that have multicellular life, divide that with multicellular life that has big animals, divide that with basically like over and over again until you get like tool-using sapient creatures, kind of like people. Even by like a low approximation, according to the Drake equation, the galaxy must have like at least 20 or 50 intelligent human-like species. Now, the question Drake asks is, if these are the odds, then where is everybody? But we cannot answer them. And then Spencer Drake asks, like, still, wouldn't you expect certain convergences, what with like the limitations of working in a physical environment and all that?
Yeah, like his specific question was like that, like his grandfather said something that due to the requirements of like intelligence and like using tools and stuff, most intelligent species in the galaxy would converge along like a humanoid body plan, that if you saw them in like at night in a dark alleyway just wearing a trench coat, you might mistake them for a human.
Yeah, and then everybody on the panel, except for myself, I couldn't make myself very clear there, but I will tell you now how. Everybody kind of like almost started wailing on the poor guys, like, no, we would never look like that's chauvinism, blah, 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 blah. And my answer was one word: the movie Mimic 1995, because this movie has things that look like people in trench coats, but actually if you look at them, they're gigantic cockroaches who kind of look like the shadow of a person. They even like, they mimic people to live among them, basically. But actually, like, if you unpacked my comment there was, something like that is not impossible. I mean, I was personally strongly on the as alien as it gets bandwagon until quite recently. When I started looking into the forms of, like, there is this one beetle who comes from a completely different background, but living in the desert, its head is exactly the shape of a gecko.
Yeah.
Except for where the gecko's mouth would be, its antenna slot in, but its eye is in the same exact location. So I started thinking that, these things could come from widely different ancestries, but on certain environments, the certain environments being a key word here. No, it's not impossible. Like, if you go to an alien planet and that planet has grasslands, maybe you see like a big hairy animal running about. Oh, it's like maybe a badger or something. But if you like kind of shoot that animal and look at it, turns out like its jaws are actually weird legs, and then its legs completely articulate with a different kind of skeleton. But the thing looks like that thing, basically.
But look, I remember the video you made on that beetle, and I remember my comment, which is that this beetle probably is a red herring for your argument, because that degree of mimicry implies that this is like an actual case of mimicry, that probably this beetle lives in an environment with a gecko that looks exactly this way, and it tries to mimic that gecko for some benefit, maybe to like scare off other predatory insects. And so the problem with that idea then is that this beetle would not look like that if the gecko did not already exist. And of course, on an alien planet, you don't have any geckos. So you get where I'm getting at, right?
That's also true. So I called it like drastic phenotypic convergence, the DPC hypothesis. And I must stress that this is a hypothesis, not a theory. But I mean, if you look, that's true. Like what you said is very valid. If it's a gecko mimic, and probably I'm mistaken there. But also, if you look at the overall shapes of like squid and tuna, like even their exact like heads are in the different place, the legs are like completely different anatomy. But if you see them swimming through the water, it's like a torpedo-shaped form. Now, granted, water is a very selective and kind of universal ecosystem. But if things begin from there and go out to land later, maybe, I don't know. But I also like agree with you that there are like some variables there. One of them is actually plant life. If plant life is completely different, like maybe it's like instead of like trees, you get things like an impenetrable sponge-like tissue just covering the land. Then you get like radically different body plans to deal with that. But still, even in that thing, like certain things like a worm or snake-like body plan, a fish-like body plan, are kind of like, I must say, destined to emerge. But like more specific things like a four-legged land animal or like a humanoid, those are also left to chance.
I mean, yeah, just compare like the dinosaur fauna with like the modern mammal fauna, and you see radically different body plans, in my opinion. Like today, you don't have any large bipedal predators, unless you count humans, but we're more like omnivores.
True. But then again, you look at things like, I mean, how much different is Silophysis from at least the function of a fox? Or how much different is Psittacosaurus from a boar? And
but they still look very different. Like like we're talking about body form here, not function, Memo.
True. But that's what I meant. That's as similar as they're gonna get. But even that envelope was the space I agreed with Drake, when everybody else was saying we wouldn't even recognize it as a living creature. And I mean, come on, you probably would.
I mean, it depends on what the alien is made out of. Like, I mean, how do you think it's a classic sci-fi concept, but like, for example, a silicon-based life form might look like a rock to us.
Or it might look like a bug. but it's just, if you look at its molecules, they're radically different molecules doing radically different things.
But like
jury's out.
Like silicon-based life would have to arise in an environment very different from Earth, maybe in like liquid fluoride, or what was it? Or maybe even in liquid rock. And of course, in such an environment, life would look radically different from how we imagine it on Earth. And you have to think about like all these variables. Yeah. Like alien life would not just look different because they have like some like other organs or stuff, but like the molecular level would already be different. And it's, I think, almost impossible to predict with like something this basic already being different, what other changes will start occurring later down the line. For example,
but even in liquid fluoride, would you not expect like a flatworm-like creature or a worm-like creature? I'm not saying like a tuna fish-like creature, but the initial letters of the alphabet, given the physical status of the environment, they might be similar. Maybe not the same, but I don't know. It's just, as the great American philosopher Eminem once said, I don't know, it's just the way I am. And I'm perfectly happy to be proven wrong on this one.
I mean, now that I think about it, like when you think about it, we aren't even sure if the earliest animals were like worm-like, because the earliest animals were like more like sponges.
Or Vendozoans.
Or the Ediacaran fauna. And today there are almost no animals that look like that anymore.
True. So maybe, I mean, I might be wrong. I'm possibly wrong. I don't know. But I just threw that out there to get the noggin jogging.
I am firmly in the camp that Wayne Barlow was onto something with Darwin 4, that when we encounter alien life, it will just be so, like, from the base, it will already be so weird that it will take us decades to unravel all the mysteries. And you will come across body forms which we probably couldn't even think of. Because...
True. But, I mean, personally, and maybe we'll agree to disagree here, but I'm more in the camp of Gert van Dijk and his Furaha world, where the animals have like a radically different, but provided the world is Earth-like, that's what I'm saying. If it's like a high crystal furnace world, or I don't know, DMT world, whatever, I don't know. But,
DMT.
Yeah, but
Joe Rogania.
Joe Rogania, like, have you tried DMT? And then all the animals are bald. They wear tight-fitting black t-shirts, and they're somewhat spicy. But anyways.
And they all die from the plague.
They throw the kitchen sink at it. They take monoclonal antibodies. Okay, this derailed fast.
Yeah.
But okay, all I'm saying is, like, given an Earth-like planet, like, this is my personal view, you might get things that kind of look like very blurred shadows of animals today.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, on an Earth-like planet, I also agree, you will find things that look like fish, like worms. You will find things with legs, probably with armor and shells, and maybe tree-like organisms, but like more like the idea of those things instead of like the actual like form. Because like just look throughout the history of life on Earth, you find many animals which occupy the same niche, but they can look very radically different. Like even like just eating insects from rebar. You have on one side woodpeckers who use their long beak and like into the wood. And then on Madagascar, you just have the eye with these like extremely creepy fingers just probing it, but it's actually the same niche as a woodpecker, but looks radically different because of its history. That's the Goldian, that's the Stephen Jay Gould inside me speaking out. Like, you also have to take into account the history of a life form and the restrictions and possibilities that are inherited with that history. Like, convergent evolution will not reign supreme. That is my firm opinion. Like,
oh well, you're a master debater, and I would even concede that you moved me maybe one more square towards your agreement. But let us just ask this to our millions of listeners. What do you think about this whole alien life schmezoogle? Do you think it will be extremely divergent, or do you think it will be kind of Earth-like, or do you think it will be maybe a mix of both? Like, I mean, there could be maybe like small rat-like things scurrying in the shadow of giant, rotating, dervish-like, radially symmetric sauropod creatures, and I don't know. But I mean, I must once again congratulate you on your solid debate skills, and
thank
you
you.
argued with evidence, and you kind of moved me one square towards conviction.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah. One last note, unless you want to say more about the alien session, you know, like Joshua Knüppes response to what was his name? Something Drake.
Spencer Drake.
To Spencer Drake's question, yeah, was that like he hated this idea of humanoid aliens so much that he made like basically a parody of it, of like a creature that looks disturbingly human but has like the intelligence of a cockroach. And it is very funny idea, but the thing is, he isn't actually even that original with that idea, because in War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells already made a subversion like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in War of the Worlds, you know, the main like intelligent Martians are like these octopus-like creatures that, like, when they come on Earth, they feed on humans, they suck out our blood. And the narrator tells us that, like, after the war was over, they like examined the capsules that the Martians had in, and in there they found the corpses of like these weirdly humanoid-like creatures that also came from Mars, but they had like completely a silicon-based skeleton, like a glass sponge, and like it strongly implied that these were like the cattle of the Martians, and that they, when they came on Earth, they fed on humans because we happened to look like their equivalent of cows.
Oh.
And I am actually like I don't have the sketch here with me, but I have a speculative evolution project about Mars, if it were slightly more habitable, and I actually want to like immortalize that creature sort of in that project. I call it the Ushabti. And you will see when it's done, but like it's the idea that the lower half of the body is like disturbingly human-like, with like basically like from the hip downwards, it looks like an extremely long-legged woman. But then the upper half, it's like this delta-dactylian body, so there's only like one arm emerging from the chest, like that's like this weird disc head, almost like the Lego Martians from 2001. You will see it. You will see it. It's
well, I mean, 2 points on that amazing concept. One, it also reminds me of H.R. Giger, who's your countryman. H.R. Giger's bizarre biomechanics concepts, which kind of had like this interlocked, weird arm-like creatures. And then if this thing ever was real, there would be an enormous market for people like Joe Rogan to import them as sex slaves, basically.
Oh.
Anyways, because bottom half looks like a human woman.
Yeah, like the hip region, you know.
Yeah, and a no brain. I mean, it's
what?
the.
Where did I say no brain?
Oh, so it is actually smart and like.
Well, I mean, like gazelle, based. But
all right.
Brain. That's I took you too literal there. Like.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to this concept. And this sounds like this kind of a dream woman many of these like alt-right guys have.
It won't look pretty from the hips up. Or maybe it will. We'll see. Like, it won't look human from the face. All right.
Even, in the very least, the chemistries are widely incompatible. So if anybody tried to tap that, their male member would probably freeze off and like desiccate. I don't know. Moving on.
It will break it off and keep it for itself.
Oh God. Okay. Please visit TK Sivgin's Har Deshur project. The link is in the video description. And towards the end, what else did we have in TetZooCon Day 2?
Okay, after that roundtable discussion, there was a coffee break, book signing, and and then came Mark Witton. Oh, no, wait. After that, like there was a schedule change.
Ooh.
And I think then John Conway presented his book, A History of Painting with Dinosaurs. Which was, very interesting. Basically, like Conway's idea behind this book is that since the Renaissance, people like Western artists have basically tried every style imaginable already. So where's the end of that?
Mm-hmm.
And like he was frustrated that none of these artists, of these prominent artists, like I don't know, like Dali or Monet, even though they could have, they never painted any dinosaurs. So he had the idea, what would it have looked like if like Cubist artists, if Impressionists, Expressionists had painted dinosaurs at the time?
Oh, true. Very, very true. And I was there, and it was like one of the most beautiful image-rich presentations out there. So, I mean, kudos on John Conway. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at a picture done in the Russian constructivist style with lots of cubes and squares depicting an ankylosaur viewed from above. And it's just beautiful. And it's just refreshing, I mean, to see things like this. So we recommend everybody to go get this book. The video is, the book is in the video description and in the pinned comment. So there.
Yeah, and I just really like the idea of, like, that's what we talked about in the last part already. Like, people have done like this photorealistic paleoart, I think already to a zenith or climax. Like, we can't get more photorealistic without like actually stepping into a time machine and photographing these animals.
Yeah.
So like, what else is there to explore? And I mean, and what Conway did here is at least a good first attempt of like, let's look at all these other art styles people had in the past and which ones could be useful. Like he said, it was more like a trial and error process in this book, and he criticized many of his own paintings, but that's the idea behind the process. He just tried something out and looked what sticked. And
I think
here is an environmental painting in the style of John Constable. I think that is already very beautiful and could be used more.
Oh, I agree. You know, maybe John was thinking about that before, but I was kind of there when we had this idea. In 2013, we visited the British National Portrait Gallery together. And there we saw like some of Constable's art and like some medieval art, basically depicting landscapes, but in a stylized manner. And I remember talking with John about like what it would be like if there was a dinosaur picture like this. And I don't know, maybe he had the ideas brewing in his head before, or maybe that was like part of the catalysts, but I remember like being there at that specific junction of history. So there.
I think like more people should do that, like explore painting dinosaurs in different art styles and seeing what sticks. Like maybe there probably are a lot of art styles that could be useful even for like scientific illustration, because they might emphasize certain things that are important.
Yeah, I think.
And they might do it better than doing it in a photorealistic style. Sorry.
A scientific illustration, actually, there are like entire areas of zoological science which still depend on illustration, because if you took photorealistic images or photographs of the thing, you just can't see it. Like one of those areas is spider science, arachnology. And this is a sad fact that you cannot identify the species of many spiders until basically you kill a member of each sex and dissect their genitals. And you need to do this under a microscope. And these organs are bizarre and very difficult to understand because of the depth of fields involved with microscope photography. They're actually very difficult to tell apart. So the whole area relies on a kind of reductivist illustration. You basically have to like look at this like strange thing under the microscope and reduce it to a kind of clip art style reduced illustration. And that's the way that particular field of science rolls basically. So there, and actually in YouTube, there are really amazing videos showing how people do these things. And one of them is in the video description. So go and see it. So there.
Yeah. Like the big art of scientific illustration is abstracting or simplifying things in such a way that you emphasize other things.
Yeah.
Because like if you just photograph the fossil directly, there is just too much noise there at least for lay people to make out exactly what you're seeing. And so if you actually draw the fossil, how you as the scientist see it, and make it like visible to a lay person in how you see, what you see is important. Like that's like the very important thing about a scientific illustration. And there are many like classic art styles that I think could help with that. And like Conway did a good job, I think, with this book, like trying that out.
True, very true. And now my bladder presents me with a dilemma. I really have to go and use the facilities for 10 seconds. And
okay,
time,
I will just stop the recording now. So we're back.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry for the interruption. My bladder just gave me an offer I could not refuse, so I had to go, but now I'm back. And we are slowly edging towards the end of TetZooCon Day 2 with TK Sivgin. And we were just discussing John Conway's amazing Dinosaur Art in Art History book. And I mean, personally, it was one of the best image-rich presentations I had seen. And especially his adaptations of medieval art are just sublime for drawing dinosaurs. And in a private conversation with John, I told him that the next book should be about archaeological art applied to paleoart. And like one of the ideas that came to me first was, you know, how in England there are these amazing big chalk drawings on hills. So there's like a giant horse somewhere, and very famous man with a club and an erect penis somewhere else. So like a dinosaur monument like that somewhere. And then you apply it to all areas of archaeology as maybe like
just had an
statues
idea.
or...
I just had an idea. Imagine like the Sphinx in Egypt on the Giza Plateau, but like as a dinosaur or maybe like a saber-tooth animal.
Ooh, so good.
You know, Franceria,
I think James Gurney came close to something like this with Dinotopia.
Oh, yeah.
But it was not as self-conscious. I mean, if you do this purposefully and maybe adopt paleoart to archaeology in each respective area these animals were discovered in, such as an Asian dinosaur in the start of Cambodian traditional art, or a French fossil in the shape of French cave art. You could really go to strange places and beautiful places too.
So, yeah, after that, I think there was like a little pause, and then there was, then came Mark Witton and Ellinor Michel about the art and science of the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, which is their new book on this topic, which I have somewhere here with me too. But have you read it? Oh, Memo?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry,
Hello?
it blocked, like it paused a bit, your recording. But we're
No problem.
okay.
I was there. I was sadly not there when that talk was made. And the book I have also not managed to read or acquire. But I do know that there's a great impetus to restore and preserve these Crystal Palace sculptures as historic artifacts, basically, because believe it or not, they haven't been registered as such.
Yeah.
Or
well, they
or
are
have they?
now. They are now
Oh.
like registered by the UK government as like needing the strongest protection,
Oh,
which is a
nice.
good thing.
And you did also attend to the Crystal Palace trip, right?
No, that's the funny story. We couldn't go on that trip because that was on that day was already our return flight early in the morning. So what we did is me and Miranda went ourselves to the park one day before the con.
Oh, nice.
And no, the problem was like we went there and like I think like the whole southern half of the park was like put behind fences because of some construction work on that stupid stadium. And they even closed off the dinosaurs. So like we walked around there at first, like trying to photograph them from afar. But like I was so pissed because this was like the only time I could have looked at the statues. So what I did is...
and you came all that way, right?
Yeah. And so what I did is I jumped the fence and just looked at them up close by myself illegally.
That's the king move. Did Miranda join you?
Yeah, like at first she stood behind to look out if someone was watching, and then she just went with me. And together we took probably like the most illegal pictures of the Crystal Palace dinosaurs.
Well, it might be illegal, but it certainly as hell was not immoral. So, I mean, kudos on you for sneaking in there.
I mean, there was like no construction work being done at the court. Like there was nothing there. There could have been a danger. So I don't know why they closed that part off too.
You never know why these decisions are taken.
Yeah. But I mean, what surprised me, like Darren Naish 2 days ago, like he posted like his big recap blog post on the TetZoo blog. Apparently his Monday group encountered the same problem, which really surprised me. I thought they would have organized it in such a way that this would not be a problem anymore when they go there.
Well, I mean, it's kind of telling of because when we were there, we met many other friends, and everyone was complaining about the inefficient way things were run in the UK. Apparently, it's kind of like degenerating as of late.
Yeah, Brexit.
Now, I mean, me coming from Turkey, it feels like leagues beyond anything I have encountered in my home country. But still, for the British themselves, like there are apparently unacceptable lapses in planning services or like lots of stupid decisions. But I mean, I guess in 100 years, everybody is going to be living in a Turkey-like country. Who knows?
Yeah, like here, like I'm from Switzerland, which it's going to sound
for you. It must be.
Yeah, we have no big problems like that. At least I have not encountered such problems in my life here. In like organizations, so like a lot of things are very well communicated. Like if there's like big construction work on this and that road, you actually get a letter in the mail a few weeks beforehand telling you, oh, you need to go drive at this road at this time to avoid this construction and stuff.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's like the wildest, we speak about a lot of wild fantasies here in this podcast, but I think from my perspective, this is the wildest fantasy of them all, like signs and letters you can trust. I mean, it always happens to me, like when I'm in a foreign country and maybe a Western country, and they're like these signs and rules and whatever, and I can never bring myself to believe in them because I was like, I grew up basically everything is like you kind of have to take a second look at that or a third look at that. I know many people who move to Western countries from other places too, like Russia, Poland, Romania, wherever. They have like similar issues. And one of my issues was with jaywalking, actually. Like back home, I just run the traffic lights all the time, every time. And if you wait for the lights, what are you? A pansy? Come on, get a life, grow a spine, grow a pair, run the road. But like over in the UK, I was surprised to see it in a similar way. And I believe you had an experience with that too, huh?
For me, it was culture shock, because here we respect traffic lights a lot, because they are pretty balanced in giving also green light to pedestrians. When I was in the UK, the traffic lights gave green light to the pedestrians maybe 3 times the whole time I was there. So like people were basically forced to jaywalk to actually progress through the cities and stuff. Like I don't think the British have invented the color green yet.
I think it might have to do with the fact that London is an old city and a crowded city, and it's really not built to accommodate like continual car and bus traffic. So the whole system is kind of falling apart on the seams.
But like even in like our hotel was in like the suburb area, and even there was this problem, even though there was far less traffic and people.
I mean, I don't know. I also remember from like reading a lot of political memoirs that during the time after 9/11, Islamists in the UK would make a point of jaywalking and crossing the red light because they did not want to follow any rules in a land where the sovereign was not Muslim, and so it was like a kind of a point for them. I mean, it was also a personal point for me, because like, who are you gonna like? You look at the road, if it's clear, you cross. Come on! But to my credit or to my discredit, I almost got run over by a bike messenger once, so I don't recommend this hazardous acts to anybody, you know.
Yeah.
It's just me living life on the fast lane.
Hey, look at it that way. The next time something like that happens, the price of your books will go way up.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, let's get back to the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. Like,
yep.
Have you ever had like a big connection to them?
I always thought they were beautiful, and like I felt that they must be preserved. Like the creatures they represent, they're beautiful. I mean, even if that's not accurate anymore, in a part of my mind, creatures like that still live and roam about. And they kind of inspire some of the creatures in my Snayat project. And I try to purposefully make them look antiquated and somewhat reptilian while remaining alien at the same time. So, like, they're really a big inspiration for me.
Yeah. Like, for my Mars thing, I'm planning some, like, soon there will be like a fossil tab that you can click on about like fossil organisms that are now extinct on this version of Mars. And for that, I have planned some animals that are a bit inspired by the Crystal Palace dinosaurs.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. But like my personal history, like as a kid, they were in many of the dinosaur books I had as a kid, but I think I kind of felt indifferent to them at the time. Like they looked just very bizarre to me. I wondered, how did they think they looked like that and stuff? But like I didn't hate them like some other people did, like that. Like
because some people hate them. That's bizarre.
Yeah, like I recognized even as a kid. I mean, they couldn't have known any better at the time, so no hate there. But yeah, like there were people actually that hated on these statues even when they were made, which is just like Othniel Charles Marsh, for example, like the famous American paleontologist. He like hated how quickly these things became outdated, and I think he even used that as an excuse to never make a live reconstruction of the dinosaurs he discovered.
I mean, that's really bizarre. I mean, I can understand contemporary hate. That is to say, like people hating on them at the time they were made, because I think a lot of these like classic Gilded Age monuments, like the same thing with Eiffel Tower, when they were built, people thought that they were like rude and kind of like over-exaggerated and a waste of money, really. And maybe it's similar to the way people think about things like the Millennium Dome, or like some of those German bizarre opera house buildings, or these like Qatar stadiums built by slave labor today.
Mm-hmm.
But like after the first generation to hate them passes away, the newborn generations kind of admire these things. I don't know if the same thing will happen with present day monuments, quote unquote.
Definitely not the Qatar stadiums, because they will
Oh,
demolish them again after the World Cup.
Yes. I mean, you know, the US CENTCOM air bases are all located in Qatar, and maybe they will do the country a bit service by using them for test bombing runs for B-52s and A-10 Warthogs and all those planes.
What about like a soccer match, but the ball is like this cartoon bomb with like a fuse?
Ooh, no, like not with people in them, but
Yeah,
after
of
the thing
course.
is
Like
done,
that's just the cartoony imagination that just came up in my head.
Arthur Clarke had a story like that, by the way. They're like a sci-fi story about two rival teams in Latin America, and they kind of are in war with each other. So they have a peace match, but the stadium is shaped like a hemisphere, and like every audience member of one country is given a kind of like special attendance card, but on one side it's mirrored. So at one signal, they all get one half of the entire stadium to aim the reflection of the sun towards the booth where the other country's president is sitting. And by concentrating the sun's rays, they vaporize them. And so that's like soccer, war, and science fiction. One of the neat anecdotes.
So, yeah. It reminds me of that, you know, these ancient Mesoamerican ball games where, according to some anthropologists, the loser team would be sacrificed to like the sun god.
Ooh, actually, Biblaridion, myself and my wife, we went to the London British Museum, and we saw like the exact like stones that were used as part of those games. And I don't know, the jury is still out. I don't think like everybody was sacrificed all the time. Then nobody would want to play this game, and teams would not have learning experience.
Yeah, I think it's like an outdated hypothesis.
I mean, maybe for like royal games or like the top league or something like that could have happened. I mean, the Romans had gladiators, so like death and spectacle are never too far apart.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that Clarke may have been just inspired by this idea.
Ooh, maybe. Ooh, maybe. Who knows?
Since it does take place in Latin America, like you said.
Yeah, Clarke's stories, they're like, his early stories have this kind of like a technical whiz kid's excitement about them. So like every technical possibility or detail he sees, he writes a story about it, and kind of like writes the social side of the story later. And it's almost like an afterthought with some stories, but there, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Crystal Palace. So basically, yeah, I've read the book. It's very I feel like it's like the definitive book on these statues that Witton and Michel wrote, and basically like the main points they talked about is like this classic narrative that these statues were like designed and authorized, or like how do you say, like approved of by Richard Owen, when in reality, if you look at the records, he did so little for the park that people were actually complaining about how lazy of an ass he was and how little input he had. So we should think of these statues more directly as like the works of Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins. And he's like extremely expert anatomical and naturalistic skills.
I mean, nothing new under the sun there. It's a bit like Tim Burton and the famous film Nightmare Before Christmas, when everybody thinks that's a Tim Burton movie. But basically, at least for that film, Burton was kind of an asshole and like maybe visited the set like once every month. And like the actual person responsible for everything was someone else. Like, and it's
that's the bad thing. We don't even remember his name. So just for posterity, I'll look it up again. Like,
the name of the actual director.
Yeah. director, I think also screenwriter and stuff. Like the guy who did most of the stuff, and Tim Burton was just a guy who had the initial idea. The Henry Selick is the director of this movie, and many others. I think like he also did James and the Giant Peach, Monkey
Oh
Boat,
yeah, that was a good one.
and Coraline. He did Coraline. That's a fantastic movie.
I haven't watched it, but it's the button-eyed girl, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like this girl that kind of like Alice in Wonderland. In her house, she finds this secret door. She goes in and she is in like a mirror universe where everyone has like buttons for eyes, and it's very creepy. But yeah, Coraline, great movie.
And also, that's a sad takeaway for all ages that assholes always get the credit. And
there is this, do you know their YouTuber H Bomber guy?
Yes.
Yeah,
I follow his work.
Yeah, he recently made like a video that starts off with like the history of certain sound effects, like the Wilhelm scream and stuff. And then he goes into the story of this one guy, Tony something, who claims to have made sound effects for like 300 different video games, and claims credit for many things for that was actually done by other people. And the whole video is about like this like culture of stealing credit in like industries where it is difficult to credit people, especially in the video game industry, where so many people are working on one product.
It's pervasive. I mean, it happens in corporate life, it happens in academia, it happens in every country. I used to think it was just like a particular evil, particular to Turkey, but it happens in every country, everywhere, all the time. And it's just like one of those sad, damning facts about life that one has to live around. You either join the assholes or you hope they never brush with you. That's the way things are.
It's like how everyone thinks Rainier is a Bob Guan project, while I wrote like 70% of the text. Let's not drop some shade on that.
Well, I'm firmly on your side there. So Rainier is a TK Sivgin project.
Okay. It's a group project. Let's just leave it
Okay. Yes. Okay.
like.
So moving on.
They talked about that, and how while they were researching this book, they also talked about like the discoveries they made, like all the statues that are missing from the modern exhibit. Like there were like an additional pair of pterosaurs that we know got destroyed. Then there was this giant Paleotherium statue that is completely missing nowadays. Ooh. There is like at least one of the megalosaurus is also missing. And apparently there was like a whole herd of Xiphodon, which is like this ancient mammal from the early Cenozoic that was built and finished by Hawkins, but like 3 of the 4 statues are now completely missing, and the 4th one was inaccurately placed with the Megalosaurus for like an unknown amount of decades, until Witton and Michel, especially Michel, looked at this statue again and found out this doesn't look like a deer at all. It looks more like a camel. And then they looked into the history and, there was supposed to be this whole herd of cameloid mammals in the park, and now they're completely gone, except for this one that was for years incorrectly labeled. And like they asked the very intriguing question of what else could there be missing?
Yeah, I mean, that's the allure of incompleteness. I mean, if everything was in their perfect place, maybe like it's somehow like more magical to think about like if 30% of something is missing, that we'll never get to know.
Yeah.
But it's also like kudos to Britain. I mean, we talked about how inefficient they seem to be getting, but there's still also things like this going on, which many countries do not have. So there, you got to take the bitter with the better.
Yeah. And this actually, like a few months ago, inspired me to do a little fun project. I you've seen it. I imagine like, what if Spinosaurus was already discovered in like the 1850s, and how would Waterhouse Hawkins have reconstructed it for the park?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Maybe you can use that for the thumbnail.
All right,
Yeah,
will do.
like I wrote a whole blog post about like what I did. Like, so I used like these bones from the Stromer holotype. I complemented that with like the Carcharodontosaurus bones. And I also put, for good measure, I put like the humerus of a Paralititan in there, because a lot of the Crystal Palace models are a bit chimeric.
Yes.
The reconstruction techniques at the time. Like, not as chimeric as what I did, but I mean, it was a thing I did for fun anyway. So.
Neat.
Yeah. I want to do more dinosaurs like that. Like, I have the, here. Like here, this is like an early skeletal I did. I need to redo this sketch anyway because the paper got dirty. Like, this is what like a skeletal for a drawing I want to do. Like, what if Cetiosaurus was reconstructed for the park?
The whale sauropod.
Yeah, it very well could have been, because it was already known at the time, and maybe Hawkins could have reconstructed it from like scraps of like the original bones, as well as some parts of, what is this one called, like this British stegosaur, which for a time was, I think, also like misidentified as a Cetiosaur. So like, how would this like chimeric reconstruction end up looking?
Will you be posting these anywhere, like Patreon, perhaps?
No, just on my blog.
Oh, but still support TK on Patreon, nevertheless. And moving on, after that talk, what happened exactly? I think there was a pub quiz, right?
Yeah, the pub quiz. Did you participate in that?
No, I was busy like clearing up the sales and taking down the art exhibit and stuff. But I kind of like went in and out very briefly, and like it was fun, but I think it could have been better if it was like a game show kind of format. But I don't know how you would do that with that many attendants, but still, like this kind of whole exam paper kind of thing, it could have been an area of improvement, but I think it was fun. Yeah. I mean, when I saw the quiz, I felt like I was transplanted to college again and having like an actual quiz. And even though there were prizes on the line, that kind of gave me college-related PTSD almost. So I bailed out and took care of my print stand instead.
Yeah. The questions were very fun. Like one of my favorite questions was like, which of these plot points did not happen in Primeval? You know that series, right?
Yes, but what were the plot points?
Yeah, like, was it 1, a giant predatory flightless bat from the future kills a lion at the zoo before attacking a car and being defeated via the use of an oscilloscope, the deployment of which leads to the discovery of its babies? Or
I think that happened.
Was it 2, a semi-bipedal crocodilian appears in the British Museum before swimming in the Thames and attacking a jogger? It is the Paleogene animal Priscichamphus, and its appearance in ancient Egypt explains the crocodile-like appearance of the god Amut.
I think it was Sobek, no? But I think that happened too.
Yeah, that happened too. Or 3, a giant, brightly colored flightless bird appears and disappears in a boulder field as it collects food for its babies while protecting them from marauding dogs. The bird is befriended by a boy who names it Kevin.
I think this is the one that never happened.
Yeah, that is actually the plot of the Pixar movie Up, which I really love.
Oh, true. Never watched it, but people who watched it say it makes them cry and it's like good for clearing your sinuses and eyes.
Like the first 10 minutes are like heartbreaking because it shows like this life of this old guy, Mr. Fredrickson, and like how his wife died before they could have children.
Oh, that's sad.
And that's just the first 10 minutes of the movie. And this alone could have been a short, like the best short movie ever made by Pixar. But it's just the beginning of the movie. And it only is in the movie to explain why this old guy is so fucking grumpy about everything in his life.
It's a bit like the 1990s film Dennis the Menace, well, starring Walter Matthau. And Dennis the Menace was like a very famous cartoon character, running into all sorts of mischiefs and driving the grumpy neighbor crazy. Well, in the movie adaptation, Dennis the Menace is, again, creating lots of mischief. But it turns out that the neighbor is a grumpy guy because he never could father children somehow or something. But and then afterwards, after the quiz,
well,
I think.
Don't you want to know how many points I got?
Oh yes, please.
Like, I think the total you could get was 30. Darren said the average people get in these TetZooCon quizzes is 4. I got 9.
Ooh, yeah.
I didn't win anything.
Who won the prize?
A bunch of people. Like there were many prizes. So like Darren just asked into the crowd, okay, who got 30 points? Who got 25? Okay, get yourself a prize. And then at the end he just made up categories to get like the last gifts out, like like who is the youngest, who has attended all TetZooCons, and who has traveled the most to get here. And there were people from France there, from Spain. I also stretched out my hand because Switzerland is also kind of far.
I could have won that from Istanbul.
Yeah, right.
But... Yeah.
They usually won that if you were there.
Yeah. But no, I think the real prize was all the friends we made along the way. Because after that, they kind of called it a day until the next day when everybody went to Crystal Palace together.
Yeah, no, like after the event, like I had to say goodbye to you and Ishin because we had to wake up early at the next day to get on our plane. And everyone else went to the pub, right?
Yeah. Actually, we went to the pub too with Biblaridion Michel. But we just had like one beer and left off. And so it turns out that pub was like a very big and like kind of like a mainstream pub in the center of Holborn. And many British people kind of avoided it because it belongs to a chain pub. But actually, I mean, to our like outsider eyes, it was like a very chill place, very nice. In fact, my wife and I went there a few days later, and like for just £1, you could get an unlimited tea, coffee, or hot chocolate refill. And so we just gave them like £2 and just sat there and chill. And that was really nice because in London, we were like all on all the time. Whereas before, I mean, like 2 days out of the week, we work from home. And the other days, we're just like commuting very locally. So even though like we're working hard, we're kind of like sedentary. But now in this like 8 days we were in London, we were like all moving all the time. And then we caught like the magic bag, which is going around London. And I freaking kid you not, like one evening we were just so tired, but we had to meet some friends at like 7. So at like 5:30, we crawled into a bookshop and went to the bottom floor where they have a couch to read these things. And like in the bottom floor, it was full of just people like wiping their noses. Their faces were red. It was like a Charles Dickens hospital scene. Everyone was like waiting for someone and they were just biding their time in the bookshop. And then in the day we departed, we really got the flu. And now for the like past 3 days, I've only been like interacting with you to record this podcast and like answering some basic emails and taking care of some basic like chores. Other than that, I was a freaking worn out, man. And it's what COVID took away from all of us. I mean, we spent our whole lives like this out and about, and now like 5 days and boom, you're done. And so there, yeah.
Did anything happen at the pub?
Well, not that I know of. Like me, Michael, and my wife just had a talk about life and not that much about TetZoo related events anyways. But I heard people like really like went on for a while drinking and enjoying themselves.
Yeah. Apparently their Naish got pretty hungover.
Ooh. And then he went the next day to Crystal Palace. I can't imagine.
Oh God! Like imagine him like drunkenly trying to ride one of the statues.
I don't know, but like, I mean, British people, they put away that stuff pretty fast. Whereas me, I'm just like one glass of beer and I'm done and the next day I usually can't drink. I'm just like a economical sort of guy in that respect.
I never drink alcohol, to be honest.
Oh, good for you. I mean, I only drink it in special occasions, but you could see how the British climate like forces people to drink socially because you just get like so cold and you just need something in your system to get you going. Glad I don't live there.
But then you could just drink tea or hot chocolate.
Oh, cold. Yeah, true, very true.
Just eat cold.
Yeah, but it's like still, at least in London, very difficult to get away from the pressures of social drinking. Well, I'm glad I don't have that dilemma.
Yeah. Like my excuse is always, I say I don't drink for religious reasons, but the truth is I just don't like the taste.
Yeah, it's also a waste of money. I mean, in my bachelor days, I used to go to all these parties and just get one soda or a Diet Coke, or if I'm feeling really like naughty, get a Red Bull and just drink that the whole night. And I always like saw it from an early age that like drinking in bars and clubs is just like a money trap and nothing happens.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol is a drug. That's the point. Like it creates its own demand.
Yeah.
So you want more supply.
Yeah. I think like if you just kind of like get like one glass for your birthday or like after a big meal in a very hot climate, every now and then, it's not bad. But I mean, if someone doesn't drink a drop of the stuff, they're not missing out on anything.
Yeah. So, outside of TetZooCon, did you do any other interesting things in London?
Oh, yes. I mean, we went second-hand book shopping, which is always a gift because usually these days you know which books you want to get. But in second-hand bookshops, you don't know what you will see. And I always find some amazing stuff. Like this time round, we got a series of Byzantine histories, like a diary book kept by some German guy who lived through the Gilded Age every day. That was amazing.
Oh.
So we actually had to buy an extra luggage to carry all the books we got. And because of our financial limitations, it's always better to go to second-hand bookshops. And we got some snacks. We just ran through some of them in 2 days. So our supply of salty crackers, what were they called? Ritz crackers.
We've forgotten the crackers, Gromit.
Yeah, no, we just ate them all. And what else did we get? Like some other like stuff we couldn't get back home. And then we went to the Forbidden Planet shop, which is like the UK's and maybe the world's biggest sci-fi book and media shop. And I always make a point of going there when I'm in London, even though kind of like half of it has been taken over by basic manga books and like these like Funko Pop head collection toys or whatever. So it used to be like wall-to-wall esoteric sci-fi. Like used to have these like Chaosium rare editions of Lovecraft's and his friends' books, which are like really priceless. And they're quite cheap too, but really valuable because they have like treasure of weird stories. So I was looking for them, but like we still like wandered around, looked at stuff, and that was that.
Yeah. I would have loved to come with you, but we had communication problems. So me and Miranda were on our own for most of our trip in London.
Oh, well, the next time round, definitely. We'll message each other and hang out together. But still,
I'll give you a walkie-talkie then.
I don't know. It's just, I mean, these eccentric ways, I don't know if they're like adding to me or costing me. I don't know. But hey, at least we had that great Chinese dinner, all of us together. That was nice.
Definitely. Yeah, that was very nice there. So Like 2 days before, I went with Miranda to the NHM, the Natural History Museum.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. And that was actually a sort of like act of industrial espionage because, I'm working for a different museum. And like my boss told me to like take notes of like what I see there, what works, what doesn't work. Stuff like, for example, there was like the Dippy Returns exhibit. To the listeners who don't know, Dippy is this skeleton
Diplodocus.
Diplodocus carnegiei that was originally discovered in, I believe, Wyoming and is now, like the original is in the Carnegie Institute that's Pittsburgh, right?
I don't know, but that skeleton was like the main centerpiece of the museum for so many years.
Like it's actually a replica of the original, but because it was in the NHM for so many years, it became one of the most famous dinosaur skeletons in the world. Also because Carnegie made many more copies that he sent to many other museums. Like you can find the Dippies in Berlin, in Austria, in Mexico City, probably Paris too. And and
everyone has one.
But the London Dippy is probably the most famous one because it was the centerpiece of that museum. And now for many years, it actually went on tour through many other museums in the UK. And now it returns until January. And I was in that exhibit, and I mean, the skeleton itself was nice, but the rest of that exhibit was kind of weird because I think they put it in an art gallery that had like nothing to do with dinosaurs otherwise, and they just had these electronic screens with like background footage from like the English coast with like ships and seagulls, and it just didn't fit at all. Like, why didn't you put dinosaur scenes there or like art? It just felt very misplaced.
That's kind of silly, to be honest. I mean, I think it was kind of a shame to take it away in the first place. I mean, I know like they replaced it with a blue whale skeleton and they kind of try to underline the message that our world is a fragile place or whatever. But you still could have given that message while having the dinosaurs. The best thing about the old Dippy in the centerpiece was you could go up to the second floor and study the skeleton from above. And you could notice things like how wide its hips were and imagine the muscles that propel the tail. Like you could look at the neck from above and you could see it from all angles, which was really like something like an experience you cannot get from two-dimensional skeletal drawings. So I think it's a kind of a shame that they replaced it. But I guess the museum studies busybodies needed an excuse for new work, I guess.
It was just very unceremonious, even though they gave him his like own hall, but apart from the skeleton and like a replica of the skull that you could touch so you could feel the teeth, like there wasn't really much else there. So that's like my big criticism. Like I wrote a series of blog posts about the Saurier Museum in Aartal, and it's so beautifully decorated, even if it's a bit outdated, but they have like many like real plants and like fake plants to just give a nice scenery. And that alone, like plants already create such a lovely atmosphere in a museum, which is otherwise such a place that feels so dead, you know?
Yeah, I don't think like the NHM has like some amazing collections, but I don't think they do such a great job of displaying them, to be honest.
Yeah. So like that was Dippy, and then of course we also went to the dinosaur exhibit.
Still a relic from the 1990s.
Yeah, really, like it was really stuck in the 90s. I mean, the highlight, of course, was like the big animatronic T-Rex that they put like a Christmas hat and sweater on. That is just adorable. I love that. I mean, the animatronic didn't age that badly, I think.
Did they still have like the weird Deinonychus animatronics?
Yeah, they do, but they gave them like fursuits. Like it's original ones, but they gave them fursuits to finally admit, yeah, okay, we know they had feathers. Yeah, just put some fucking rocks over them. That's literally what it looked like.
Oh, well. So, I mean, espionage-wise, you don't have much to fear, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I know what not to do. That's the thing. Yeah, like
Such
that.
a
It was
shame.
that the exhibit was very much stuck in the 90s. And even though they gave those animatronics at first, they still had like a model of Deinonychus with
Uh-huh.
scales and to show off, yeah, what did scales on dinosaurs look like? And yeah, like they had, like in the 90s, that was still defensible. But now this is like the worst example of a scaly dinosaur you could have picked.
I think it's the result of a museum approach that's more concerned with how many heads they get into the museum.
Yeah.
Even if they're not non-paying visitors, that's still their metric of success. Like, so they bring in all the kids with like all these parents who don't know anything or care.
Also, they had like dinosaur skeletons hanging from the ceiling, which I don't know, from some angles it looks cool, but these were terrestrial animals, so it would be much cooler if you actually could look at them from the ground. But I think they did that for space reasons. Like hanging skeletons from ceilings makes the most sense if you have like actual flying animals or maybe marine animals. So you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine them flying or swimming above you. But with like an Allosaurus skeleton, you want to stand next to that so you have an idea of how tall this thing is.
Yeah, it's a shame because a lot of those skeletons, like the baryonyx and some of the hadrosaurs and stuff, they're actually like really neat skeletons, but they're just placed in such a cramped way that you just walk past them and just don't get to study them. And the whole dark, like what the fuck is wrong with that? Like everything is dark, like some 1990s techno party or something.
Yeah.
That's not the way to look at
I mean,
fossils.
I like the atmosphere of that because, I mean, especially in like the 90s, 80s, dinosaurs had an aura of mystery about them. Like there was many things we still don't know. They still didn't know. And honestly, we still don't know it. And I
Mm-hmm.
do like maybe we should bring back like this mysterious aura around dinosaurs because there was something charming about that. But yeah, like you said, it's for like an exhibit where you want to see everything clearly. It's not the best. There you're right.
I mean, like you expect like Wesley Snipes as Blade to come out of the corner any second, like cutting up vampires. It's so dark and like murky, and usually with all those crowds and
I have
crying
to assure
children.
these dinosaurs are dead.
All right.
Yeah.
So that was that for London TetZooCon and and our spectacular 2 day coverage of the event. I mean, in closing, I could say that it was such a refreshing thing. And my wife and I still say that it gave us a new sense of perspective, purpose. We hadn't really been out of the country for 3 years. So it was a great visit. I mean, as the meme says, I will never financially recover from this, but still it was worth every penny. And like meeting you, everybody else in person, that was great. So if any of our viewers are from TetZooCon, welcome back. And it was great to see you in person. And what would you say for closing words?
For closing words, NHM, get your act together.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. First that. Second, it was lovely, and I'm not sure if I will be again there next year because I hope I will and see you all there. And yeah, just everyone keep being you, being nerdy about things, having discussions.
Yeah, and
Write
special
books,
thanks to
write
John
books, do
Conway.
art, write blog posts, do whatever you want.
Yeah, and in final statements, special thanks to John Conway and also his wife Jenny. Like she's like an unacknowledged force in organizing these events. Like she basically, without her, the event would not have come together. So special thanks to John, Jenny, and Darren for making this event possible. And special thanks to them once again personally for sponsoring my visit there. And like it was just encouraging in an age where there's not much left to encourage. So thank you all for being with us throughout this 2-part coverage of TetZooCon 2022. And as always, try supporting TK and myself on Patreon and beyond. And that is from me. That is all to say. Thank you and have a nice day.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.